Hello, everyone. My name is Exooki Z, and thank you for joining us on today's stream. Coming up next is a guide to wormhole space diplomacy, which is going to be presented by Lord Darkfire, CEO of Ronin. If you're not familiar with Lord Darkfire, him and a bunch of his Ronin crew have been around wormhole space for quite a while. Lore is certainly not new to wormhole space or the political landscape of it, and he's going to be joining us to talk to us a bit about probably both what's going on now and maybe a bit of historical information too about how things maybe used to be. But I know this is one of the highly requested discussion topics of the political landscape of who's and what's going on, and how he goes about doing all of that. How are you doing, Laura?
Well, no pressure there.
Set the bar high.
Thank you very much. So just want to go over some wormhole diplomacy. My presentation is mostly focused on my approach to making friends and contacts with folks. And that's really what we're going to be focusing on. There are some discussions of historical rivalries and political landscape and so on. So in fact, let's just go ahead and move straight into that first. So wormhole politics explained, right? As Yoda would say, permanent political complications there are not, right? I've lived in high sec, low sec, null sec, and in wormhole space, and as seasoned wormholers know, you're going to have a new neighbor every day. It gives you a unique social structure of interacting with folks. In that, unlike null or low sec or high sec, you don't have permanent neighbors. Therefore, you don't have this constant permanent friction. You don't have these resource wars. You're going to have new folks every time, which is, I think, one of the biggest charms of living in wormhole space. But on a social level, that also allows you to make friends with folks. And by friends, I don't necessarily mean blues, but to get to know them and to not have permanent enemies. In order to survive in wormhole space, and as I've learned from political history in wormhole space, is that you don't want folks to develop grudges against you, and you don't want to hold grudges against anyone else. You want to have a good time. You want to go fight. You want to go lose ships or kill ships. That's all perfectly good. That's really what it boils down to, right? The nicest thing is that today you're friends with someone and tomorrow they're going to be on the opposite side of a field. Let me give you an example. Quantum Inquisition was this one alliance, I think they're still around though, where they were getting evicted a couple of months ago. Ping went out to various corporations to come help them. We were one of them. We went out to help. Exit Strategy, Sin Alarm right here was one of the folks who was evicting them, along with Wholesale, led by Renizes Khan. We were on the defense side. We helped them form the defense and organize them a bit. Eventually, Cindy, Turbo, and a couple of others came in to help, and we ended up winning on the defensive side. Fast forward a couple of months, maybe a few weeks after that, or maybe a whole month, we decided we're going to go ahead and evict Quantum Inquisition. And so we connected with Turbo, we connected with Be Nice, with Weebs. We went ahead and started eviction. And guess what? The people who ended up defending him were Wholesale and Exit Strategy this time. So the sides completely flipped, pretty much, right? Because that is the nature of wormhole space. It's not about holding any kind of major grudge. It is simply a matter of convenience. I'm sure you all have seen those memes, right, where the police officer is holding a little baby, that's high sec. Someone's kissing the Godfather's fingers, that's null sec. And then there's some guy with a big Christian cross on his chest, golden cross, and he's in low sec. And then wormhole space is all about that chaos, that Mad Max kind of chaos. That's really what our political thing is. Now, that said, though, there are corps that develop those grudges, and they have this long-term kind of battle with each other. Take a look at TD Sin and Hard Knocks. They've been at each other's throats for a long, long time. I don't play a video game to hold grudges against folks. And if someone holds a grudge against us, it just becomes a nasty kind of feeling, right? It becomes a long-term conflict. So diplomacy is going to be about try to avoid those sort of situations where you don't have any permanent enemies, etc. So the beauty of wormhole space is anyone can be your friend if you just try. You just need to have the right approach. The right approach is you got to break out of your shell. You are not your character, and your character is not you. Because diplomacy, at the end of the day, is about making authentic human connections. It is not about spying. There's a spying aspect that people take, and that's perfectly fine. It's a valid sort of gameplay. But the way I approach it is diplomacy is not about spying. It's about making those authentic connections. And let me emphasize this with a short story. When I first started Ronin 1, there were a bunch of corporations who would bully us because, I was like a two-man corporation, and they were these big, bad six-man groups who would come and try to evict us and so on because they knew we were weak. But I went to eVegas in 2018, met a lot of these folks who were now part of other groups. And you know what happened? When you talk to these people in real life, they cannot role play being an asshole, excuse me, but they just can't, because they're real people. They're looking at you as a real person. They're interacting with you as they would normally would in their real life. That veneer of role playing completely melts away. It falls apart when you meet people in real life. And that really helped pop my mind open as well, is that folks are just role playing. They're not really just being jerks in real life. They don't hate you. They're not malicious. It's just a way for them to have fun. If you realize that, then all you got to do is break yourself out of that mindset as well, so that you can approach them in a real life mindset. So my recommendation is, when you're doing diplomacy, be your real self. We have real feelings, we have families, we have lives outside of Eve, and we want to bring that a little bit into our interaction with other folks in Eve. So think of it like this. The common but experienced Eve mind is besieged by suspicion of the stranger because betrayal is a valid and oftentimes glorified gameplay mechanic. People would subconsciously slip into this suspicious mindset as soon as you approach them out of nowhere. So help them break out of that mindset by reminding them that you're a real person. Look at the pictures up on the slide. These are three of our folks, right? Including me. I'm up there with my kid. Leo's up there with his wife, and there's Shaq. There's a reason why we keep these pictures up. It's because we are staying true to who we are. These are our actual people. This is our real life. And that helps people make that genuine connection. So when I approach folks, I'm not simply Lord Darkfire, the CEO of a PvP corporation. I'm a real life person who's playing a video game, and I want to talk to you. It's kind of like that. I conduct all my diplomacy through Discord. Trying to get people on comms really helps. It's not necessary, but talking to them brings that real audible tone. They can pick up your emotions. They can connect with you better. And then, of course, keep your Discord profiles as real as you can. Now, you don't have to do this if you're not comfortable doing it, but this is the way I approach it. You don't have to give out your real name if you're not comfortable because you were afraid of getting AWOCs or so on. That's totally cool. I often say, I'm an attorney. I'm in Houston. I practice here, because that is part of my real life. And they can understand that, when I'm going to be online, when I'm not going to be online, and that's totally cool. Now, once you've prepared yourself to break out of your shell, what do? You join every single Discord that you can ever find. Now, there are a couple of folks I know out there who don't like joining Discords. I have too many Discords. I don't want to go there and blah, blah, blah. That's fine. That's the way I want to play. But they're crippling themselves on a diplomatic stage, because the more folks that you can reach out to, the better, right? Think about it like this. If you are ever in trouble in a forest, would you rather be there with 6 friends, or would you rather be in a crowded mall with 1,000+ friends and acquaintances and you shout out for help? Right? That's really what it boils down to. Now, do you want to get stuck in the drama of one group of friends who are upset at Becky for being a bore at a party, even though there's this great movie out that you've been waiting for? Well, if that's the case, if you have lots of friends, go ask your other group of friends. Go out with them. So the way I do it is I trawl through Eve jobs, less than 10 Discords, Eve forums, in-game recruitment channels, anything that way I can find Discords, and I join them immediately. And I approach them and I start talking to them. And the way I talk to them too is also pretty straightforward. So let's go through that. You got to be friendly, but you got to be strong. If you're cheery, you want to use your positive vibe with them. Everybody loves serotonin. Be that positive vibe in the day, right? With exclamation points, laugh, smile, etc. But after you say hi to them and you kind of explain to them why you're here and what you're doing, then you should drop it down to seriousness. This is what I do. It's like, but don't get me wrong. We will shoot you in the game wherever we find you unless we're on ops together. I always say that. And then I bring it back up. I'm like, hey, because that's how friends play a PvP game. It's like FIFA or Counter-Strike. Yay. So when I do that approach, I start friendly, drop it down to seriousness, bring it back up to happiness. It makes them think, well, I guess this person doesn't want to add me to a blue donut. What do they want? What do they want? They have that question in mind. What is your purpose in talking to me? It's easy. You want to offer gifts. We want to host NPSI, for example. Ronin 1 hosts NPSI every now and then. This helps develop our corp relationship, CEO to CEO and corpmate to corpmate, because at that point you are having your members hang out with other members. And as a CEO, one of the nicest things that I like is someone coming up to me and saying, hey, I'm going to give you and your corp free content once a month if you just come hang out with us. And as a CEO, that takes burden off of me, that I don't have to find content. I don't have to make sure that my corp mates are being entertained. This really helps. So this, you can get into good graces with other folks as well by doing that. And also, there's this thread in some Wormhole corps, or actually really in Eve, where knowledge is kind of hoarded as if it's some sort of super cool secret thing that you don't want to give up, because if you do, you're going to lose some sort of power. Don't do that. Don't be like that, right? If you know a cool trick, if you have uncommon knowledge, share it. They'll find out from someone else anyway, so why not collect the brownie points for yourself instead? Have a superior wormhole mapper? Share it. Bookmarking system? Share it. Doctrine? Share it. Because you're taking advantage of folks who don't have enough knowledge. You're giving them that knowledge to reap long-term rewards, giving them that sort of knowledge that they can use every day, and they're going to appreciate it, and you're going to earn their goodwill. This is the way to make good diplomatic relations with everybody. Well, what do you do with this good diplomatic relations and all this goodwill? It'll really help you when you're a Wormhole corporation and now you are about to get evicted. So during diplomacy, here's what you really got to do. Number one, please do not invite the whole world to help you defend your wormhole. There are plenty of examples of where Wormhole corporations call Ronin 1 and they call a couple of others, and then they call 10,000 more other corporations. And once we found out that other people were coming, we immediately refused to come, because at the end of the day, we're paying our Eve subscription to have fun. If we have 10,000 people on one side that are just coming to defend you, and there's like 40 people on the other side, it is not fun for anybody. Not just that, but there can be political complications. You don't know, as a defender, as a local resident of the whole, who is friends with who. You may not know who's had some sort of drama recently, and then they end up shooting each other. There are a couple of evictions where this has happened, where people have betrayed each other pretty recently. They were pretty famous on our Eve as well. So you don't want to invite the whole world to help you defend your whole. Another thing is, please just invite one or two corporations or alliances and rely on them to escalate with more bat phones. And this does a couple of things for you. You will, first of all, be guaranteed that no one's going to betray each other, right? Or almost guaranteed that no one's going to betray each other. If the corporation that you've invited calls their own bat phones, they're already friends with them. So you won't be calling, for example, Ronin 1, and then, I don't know, let's say Quantum Inquisition, because we evicted them, they may shoot us. So that could create complications. But if you invited us, and then we went ahead and called someone else, like Foxholders or whatever, we know that we're going to get along and it'll be all right. So just invite one or two corporations and let them escalate as they need to. Having lots of friends allows you to select for time zones. So if your time zone if your Citadel time zone is going to be falling under European time zone and so on, then you have European friends that you can call in, right? And so on. So that's really helpful. And then finally, never lie about how poorly prepared you are, and be conservative about the number of players you can field on your own. And this is directly from one example. Way back when Mighty Beans existed, Ronin and Mighty Beans went out to defend some folks. I don't even remember their name exactly. And this person was like, yeah, I have 10 people and I have some ships to hand out, but come on in and we're going to go there and we're going to defend. And I think Hard Knocks was evicting them. So we went there. We brought in the entire fleet in, and we saw the Citadel, and the Citadel number was 2. It was just one guy, and he had his one friend with very low SP. There were no 10 people. He didn't have any ships to hand out. But he lied to us because he really desperately wanted help. That was very upsetting. Now, if he had been upfront, maybe we still would have come. If he had been upfront, we would have done it. But the fact that he was deceptive really destroyed our trust with him, destroyed our belief that this was actually going to be worth doing. So we literally got up and left. And we exited the hole. We said goodbye to Hard Knocks, and Hard Knocks said, oh, well, rip, and that's it. The guy lost. So be very, very honest about how much resources you have, and if you're unprepared, say that. It's okay. People will still come to help you, because at the end of the day, people are paying subscriptions to Eve to go pew-pew. If you're giving them free content, they will come. Don't give them money for that, but offer them some SRP if you want. But this is where diplomacy really comes in to help. And then finally, the question is, what is best in Eve? Here's my perspective. You can destroy an enemy, or you can take their guns away in your favor. To me, that's the best Neve. That's the ultimate diplomatic quote unquote trick that you can do is convincing your enemy to be your ally. And with that, I will turn this over to any questions and answers.
All right. A lot of chatter about, people you named, events that you named. Not a ton of questions so far. So if anybody has questions, please throw them out there. One from earlier in your presentation was, what made you decide to turn around and very quickly go evict a corporation that you had just previously been helping defend?
Yeah, so a couple of things really. One was that lots of our friends had become very offended about a certain person who was in their corporation, and then they pinged us about it. They were like, hey, let's go evict these folks. So first I tried to convince Quantum Inquisition to drop this person from the corp, but they refused to do so. And since most of our friends were going to go there, we decided to go ahead and do that anyway. This person that they were talking about had some very controversial perspectives about Black people and about Nazi Germany. And this is what is going to attract folks to come evict you if you have that sort of controversial opinion. So we decided we're going to go help our friends.
How do you go about trying to keep everybody on the same team when you call in two groups to come help you and they don't like each other?
If you are a local that is being evicted and you have two friends who you know don't like each other, be upfront with them. Talk to them. Say that, hey, can I go ahead and invite XYB group and listen to their perspective? And then if both of them say no or one of them says no, then you have to choose which group do you want to invite. You can't have this expectation where you're going to invite two groups that absolutely hate each other and somehow, for your sake, they are going to put their guns away. Don't do that, because you know what's going to happen. Even if they do put their guns away against each other, right as soon as that thing is done, they will turn on each other. Or if someone starts drama with each other, it is going to be it's going to go down pretty bad. So you have to choose. You gotta decide. Pick one group and ask them to bring in friends.
Have you ever dealt with people before that simply had no interest in any form of diplomatic connections?
Yeah, so when I join every single Discord server I can, right, I would say about 80% of them give me a positive kind of response. 10% of them just don't respond at all. And then 10% of them just kind of listen to me like, nah, we're not interested in talking to you. And that's fine. Your job as a diplomat is to find more friends. And you like to say, you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make them drink, kind of thing. So if you're out there, you're being positive, you're trying to develop relationships, and some folks just don't want to talk to you, find someone else.
Have you noticed that the average group size in Wormhole space is growing? And if so, has it affected how you go about diplomacy?
Yeah, so ever since Alliance Bookmarks came out, there has been a consolidation of a bunch of corporations joining one giant alliance, living together in one hole, perhaps even in several different holes. And I have noticed that trend. So it really depends on what your objectives are, right? What kind of group are you? Are you a C2N5 corp that really does all the nullsec PvP? This is your 95% of your PvP is outside the nullsec. Then you really don't need to, glue up with a large group. If you are a C4 corp that has some known enemies and you want more strength, then you want to bring in more groups to live with you. That's perfectly cool. Some folks do that. And then I've also seen some corporations joining other corporations temporarily while they quote unquote get their feet back up on the ground. And that's fine. But at the end of the day, you have to understand what kind of wormhole you're living in, what your objectives are, and then go out and meet those ends. If you want other corporations to join you in your wormhole, you got to have really good diplomatic relations with them, not just on a CEO to CEO level, but on a corporation member to member level, because you want your friends to get along with their friends and you want them to integrate because you're going to be living together, sharing this common space, sharing this common bookmark system, and so on. So you got to have much more closer ties with folks if you want to glom together with other groups.
All right. Thank you very much, Lore. That was great. And thanks for your presentation and the time answering questions.